Okay.
All right, so just real quick by introduction, I'm Jared. I'm with Pillar Post. I've been doing inspections since 2006. So a little while. My team covers most of the Wasatch Front, but we do have Pillar Post office in Salt Lake. We also have in Cedar City, St. George. So I know a lot of times we get South Utah. My good friend Aaron is down in that area and does a great job as well. But that's one of the, what was that?
We just did my mom's house.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Pillar Post, we gotta call them.
So Aaron's a good guy. He's mentored with me for years. That's kind of one of the value or the benefits with Pillar to Post is we'll run into things and we'll be like, so I've been doing this almost 18 years and just had one yesterday. I'm like, I don't know what this is. So called up my friend that's been doing it for 25 years over in Oregon and sending pictures, and so we're dialoguing. So you have this bigger network with our inspectors. So even though my guys haven't been doing as long, they're constantly working. I'll get done with this class and I'll have a whole thread of, hey, what's this? How do we comment on this? How do we, and so you get that brain share from a bigger team. We do a lot of inspections with all of the other services. So just taking a step back, and this is playing into the class, because really the goal of this class is to help you as agents understand a little bit more how you can integrate the inspection into your seller side of things. So a lot of times agents are like, well, I'm just a listing agent. Yeah, I don't really deal with much with inspections. And so that's what this class is going to kind of focus on, how to change that mindset a little bit. But one of those things is, as listing agents and as buyer's agents, one thing that's really shifted in the last couple of years is, I would say 2 or 3 years ago, about 15% of our business was additional services, radon, mold, termite, that kind of stuff. We're now around 30%. So the number of buyers that want a mold test, that want a sewer scope, that want these other services has doubled for those other services. So just be aware that all of that other stuff. So what does that mean? It means there's more things to be aware of when you're on the seller side. The other thing is the average cost for your inspection obviously is going up. So if you're still telling your buyers, yeah, inspection's like $400 or $500. Yeah, if you want the very basic inspection, you can probably find $400 or $500. The reality is that most of our clients are spending closer to the $700 range, just because everybody wants to know all this other stuff. So my opinion is part of that is because people are spending a lot more money. And so they're looking for more peace of mind and also more negotiating. That's, unfortunately, that's what I hear is, well, yeah, we're just looking for more things that we can negotiate. That's, unfortunately, it's not so much anymore. I want a home inspection for peace of mind. I want a home inspection so I can reduce.
Because the seller's ridiculous on his price.
So that's kind of what we want to talk about with this class, is with pre-listing inspections. And so technically, just before I get started, because I need the state rules on, I can't be, I don't, marketing services, so we're gonna talk real general when it comes to pre-listing, but before we get started, Pillar to Post right now, our corporate office is doing some market research as it comes to seller inspections. The goal is to look at how in some states and some markets, you're starting to see where the seller inspection is becoming as invaluable as staging or professional photography. That it's, so a friend of mine has the Pillar to Post in Southern California. 70% of their business is for sellers. So that's all they're doing. And so this class, we're going to be talking about why. One little plug here before we really dive into the screens is, because corporate is trying to learn a little bit more about this, they are trying to gather that data. For the next 3 or 4 weeks, we've been doing this for the last month or two. For the next 3 or 4 weeks, they will cover the cost of one of your listing inspections, with the hope that you can give some feedback on how that impacts your listing. So if you have a listing coming up, reach out to me. We'll do the inspection for free, and corporate will pay me for it, just so that we can get some feedback on how does it work. So talk to me afterwards about that. If you have questions, those of you online, feel free to reach out to me. This is something that just the corporate chose 6 franchises around the country, and they chose one of mine. So unfortunately, it's not something that other offices are gonna be able to offer, but, if you have something in Utah County, then, reach out to me. Okay, so that part of this, I'm gonna be kind of deviating a little bit from some of the slides because we've been doing this pilot program for the last month and a half. So I'm gonna be interjecting some of those lessons learned that we've been seeing as we've been doing this and different things we've been trying with different agents to see how to make this more successful. So, okay, so more than anything, we want to set the stage for seller inspections. It's surprising that I still talk to a lot of agents and the general consensus is, you know what, it's better that my sellers don't know all its information. We'll just deal with it after the fact, which, yeah, that's what everybody's been doing for decades. And really what this is all about and what we are seeing is pretty guaranteed your closing will go quicker and smoother. That's what the feedback is from all the ones that we've been doing. And so this is what we're gonna talk a little bit about is why. A lot of it comes down to disclosures, and what the buyer wants to know versus what the seller knows. So we're gonna talk a little bit about what are other things that the buyer may want to know. So this class really focuses, this is a class that we submitted years ago, and so things have changed a little bit. So that's why I'm saying we've learned a lot in the last few months that I'm gonna be giving you kind of last minute information that's not so much on the slides and kind of deviating from some of it. And that's part of our market too. 2 or 3 years ago, seller inspections, I mean, how many buyers were even waiting inspections? I mean, things change and we're at a point now where last time I heard that we're like at record highs for available homes out there. So sellers need that extra edge and that's kind of what we want to focus on. Sellers disclosures. So number one, so a lot of this is, we're gonna talk about seller inspections, but part of this too is just as a listing agent, just things that, I'm not an agent, I'm not gonna tell you how to sell houses, but I'm gonna give you a lot of perspective as far as doing this for almost 18 years of things that I see on my end of things that, wow, if the seller and the seller's agent had just done this, oh man, look at all of the headache that we would have saved, look at how many, so that's what a lot of this information is. So to me, it starts with the seller's disclosures. So tell me, how do your agents, how does that process? Is it, hey seller, we're gonna list your house, fill out this form, let me know when you're done? Is that kind of the?
I fill it out with them. I go through every question and say, okay, do you have any memory of anything like that? Like, I spend so much time on freaking seller disclosure.
And I think that's, I noticed that. So a lot of clients, just side note, I would always recommend whatever seller's disclosures you have for your buyers, send that to the home inspector. It makes our job so much better when we're doing the inspection. So I see a lot of sellers disclosures and they're all over the place. So this is some feedback. Number one is I would say definitely, I've talked to a lot of agents that are like, well, I don't want the liability. They need to fill it out. That's, they're very hands off and great. Yeah, that might save you from maybe that one weird odd situation where you could be drug into something, but all of those other ones where it's gonna cause you 10 times more work because you really didn't pay attention to what was on there, I don't agree. Has the home ever been contaminated with meth? Has there been aware, actually, let's just take a second there. I think I heard Ann is gonna come and talk meth mom. I work a lot with Ann. What do the seller's disclosures require when it comes to meth houses? Have a wording on it?
If it's been remediated, does it say that?
So it's specifically, you only have to disclose it if it's currently,
Oh, yeah.
are you aware if
Yes.
it's currently contaminated?
Yeah,
I don't think it's contaminated. I just kicked out my tenant because they were doing a bunch of drugs, but I don't think it's contaminated for meth, so I don't have to disclose anything. That's what we're kind of talking about is great. I just got off the phone yesterday afternoon dealing with a client where, yeah, basically she's been working on this deal for months and months and months and the meth just came back super positive. And they should have known all that and anyway. So if you're seller, oh no, I don't think it's contaminated for meth. The other caveat with the seller's disclosures and legal requirements is if it's been remediated, you also don't have to disclose it. But if your neighbors saw this going on, you know, and then the new buyer comes and starts meeting the neighbors and they hear about this, what's that gonna do to your transaction? You know, hey, wait a minute, we found out this was a meth house, so number one is make sure you know what the history is, make sure things are disclosed as much as you feel, and then also have good people like Ann, home inspectors. To me, I mean, we just got one that was 5 times the state limit, a few days ago, and the buyer's like, well, I guess we're gonna go start looking again, and I was like, why? If you get it cleaned up, my brother lived in a meth house, well, a cleaned up meth house. You know, I felt comfortable, you know, with him living in, you know, once it's been properly cleaned up, in all honesty, a home that's been properly decontaminated is probably the healthiest home down the street, but. All right, we're gonna kind of get into the weeds here. Marijuana grow houses, does that contaminate a house? No,
Does it?
No.
no, it doesn't.
It makes it smell.
It can make it smell. This is one we've run into a number of times where we get up into the attic and we see all these charred roof, you know, trusses and things, and hey, you've had a major fire. Oh no, and that just kind of snowballs this whole thing. And so I was like, oh yeah, well that, again, we had one and it was pretty bad. It hadn't been what would look like professionally remediated. And when we talked to the seller, like, I don't know, we've been here 8 years, we've never had a fire. They finally talked to a neighbor that had been on the street. The house was built like in the 20s. And they're like, oh yeah, old man so-and-so back like 60 years had a chimney fire and blah. So again, it's something that caused some headache. Is it a concern? Not really, but again, it comes back to that. If the seller had known that and done that preemptively, there was an extra week of trying to figure that all out. That is just time and money for everybody. Oh, I'm like, what the heck? That's our first keyword. I'm like, I don't know what that relates to on home inspections, but.
Don't eat pineapple in your house.
That's the keyword. All right, mold is another one that comes up a lot on disclosures because everybody's perceptions of mold are a little bit different. Some people are super freaked out, some people don't really care about it. But I can tell you, whenever most buyers see that, yes, we've had a mold problem, this is what most buyers will think about. Same type of thing about flooding. The classic example I remember was, we got the disclosure that said, yeah, our basement's flooded a few times. So I'm looking all over for all the signs of water damage and all kinds of stuff. And the seller happened to stop by while I was doing the inspection. So I said, hey, your disclosure said your basement's flooded a few times. Can you just tell me what happened, just so I can kind of look into it a little bit more and tell the buyer? Oh yeah, my son like flushed his teddy bear down the toilet a few times so it overflowed. I'm like, that's a basement flood, your toilet overflowed? So that's what I mean, is you need to, if.
Why is he flushing the teddy down the toilet? That's a real fight.
What's wrong with
The toilet.
That kid is very
So
disturbing.
making sure that what your sellers are communicating is what the buyers are going to be understanding. So what are the types of things that come up a lot that are always touchy subjects when we do an inspection and that end up being issues for buyers? Renovations are a big one. There are certain things that do need codes, adding a pool, adding a new deck. That's another big one, is deck renovations. On the selling side, it's like, oh, let's go and update the deck. It's gonna make everything show better. It's gonna add some value to the home, and everybody wants to see this new deck instead of this old rickety falling apart thing. Well, more than 50% of the decks that we inspect, there's something wrong with them. And so maybe it's just they use the wrong screws, they used the wrong brackets, maybe it didn't get nailed off properly. Something usually simple, but now your expense and what you perceive as an improvement is now going to have a negative effect because the buyer's like, oh, well, it doesn't look like it was done professionally. And that's not to say, and that's the other thing too, is on some of these things, it doesn't matter that your homeowner did it or it was done professionally. You know, one of the classic deck blunders I had was this was 6 years ago, $2 million house. So, you know, $4 or $5 million house now. Parade home, you know, beautiful home, gonna be in the parade. And I'm looking and I'm inspecting the deck and the deck nails were starting to rust. So it's a brand new house. They haven't even totally finished it. And nails are already starting to rust. Well, deck nails, one of the requirements is they need to be stainless or galvanized so they don't corrode. And here this one's rusting after just a few months. I look down and I match up some nails that are laying on the ground and they use siding nails to install the deck.
Sounds like they have a deadline to get that thing ready for the parade. Yeah, pretty much.
Parade homes have kind of a stigma for that reason.
Yeah.
So again, deck renovations, any construction, usually building permits are required, so that's another thing just to talk to your sellers about. And what if they didn't? I mean, how many basements are finished without a permit, right?
A lot, and it's a pain. I did a business in my basement and they said it was permitted. We went through the city, it wasn't. We had to do a destructive permit, which you have to like tear down drywall. Anyway, it was a big pain, so just get the permit. Yes, just get the
Ours
permit.
was not permitted, we ran into issues and they lied about stuff.
Oh.
They pushed the sheetrock too hard against the wall and it cracked a drain pipe. And when we got our home inspection, it was just a little line in the basement of the floorboard, right? And the lady said our daughter was playing with a pitcher of water and toys and dolls, and she spilled it. I'm like, that makes sense, there's no water now,
Yeah.
whatever.
No,
No.
it was-
Oh.
When we took the wall off a year later, I can see glue slathered all over the crack. So he knew he cracked the pipe because he tried to fix it just by putting glue all over it. So yeah,
Oh, yeah.
even the home inspection sometimes,
Can't catch it all.
yeah.
So again, so bottom line, has major work been done? Those are questions to be asking your sellers. If it wasn't done, do you need to go back and get permits? What are the steps that you can do that can take time, that can cost money? So again, all of that, again, and depending on the buyer, that might be a deal breaker. That might be, I mean, we've had a lot of Californians moving in, and when you mention, oh, there was no permits done, that's like,
We're out.
yeah, it's a whole big. Wells or septic tanks, again, not so much that it's a problem. Funny thing on wells and septics, most people, you go and you show them a rural property and you're like, oh yeah, this is on a septic tank, and it's like, oh, I don't know about that, I kind of feel a little uncomfortable. A lot of buyers are kind of, I grew up in Montana, and I was talking to my friend who's an agent up there. And we were talking about this, she's like, it's funny, because if I go and show a house, and say, okay, this is on the city, they're like, oh, you mean I have to rely on the city to get that stuff done? I can't just take care of it myself, I need to rely on some, so it's all perception, so. Again, it's not a problem, but there are a lot of things. So for example, when I do an inspection and I say there's a well, where is it? How deep is it? When was it last tested? What about a septic system? Where is it? How big is it? Where is the drain field? All of those questions, that's beyond a home inspection. And depending on where it is, getting someone out there to do some of those tests and find all that is a lot of time. So it's not so much a problem, but if you want your due diligence to extend, ignore this until after the home inspection and you can be guaranteed that it will extend.
You guys don't do septic, it's a separate type of
The
inspection.
septic, we'll inspect sewer lines going out to the tank,
Yeah,
but then the tank and the drainage field, that's what you'd need the septic coming for. Okay, we're gonna kind of cruise through some of this. Major upgrades. Has the roof been replaced? Oh yeah, the neighborhood came and they all put together and helped pitch in and give me a new roof. I felt so bad. I was just going and inspecting this house. I knew the listing agent really well, and she was trying to help this widow. The neighborhood had gone together. They put a new roof on and they forgot to put the tar paper down. So, yeah, so just because something's new doesn't mean it's good to go. Furnaces, ACs, and sometimes it's just interesting things, like we did an inspection on Friday and the house was 8 years old and it had a brand new air conditioner. And so it's not great, you got a new air conditioner. We weren't expecting that. But it's also like, oh, what happened to the first one? Does that mean the furnace hasn't been replaced, but it's been so poorly maintained that the AC went out? It just raises all these questions. And so anything that's out of the ordinary, the more information you can present up front, the less questions and uncertainty the buyer's gonna have. Windows, water heater is a big one. Water heater codes have changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years. So if your homeowner went to replace the water heater, most likely it won't meet new codes. They just swap it out. Now most water heaters, most cities now require 2 earthquake straps. A lot of them require a 4-inch Fenn instead of a 3-inch Fenn. So there's all these upgraded.
Plumbing companies just go into the city, right? They're like.
We need more business.
That's the skeptic in me, I guess.
Oh.
Where are we going? Oh,
Okay,
engine.
there's word number 2 for you virtual attendees. Okay. When was the furnace last serviced and cleaned? I thought I had another slide right here. So that's another big one. If I'm, as a home inspector, if I go in and I see a 20-year-old furnace, but I see this little card on there where every time the guys come in, he like writes down, yep, it was serviced this, and we replaced this, and we did this and this. Okay, great, it's 20 years old, which average life is about 15 to 20 years. It's 20 years old, but it's been well maintained versus here's a 15-year-old and I don't think it's ever been serviced. Which one, as a home inspector, am I going to communicate to the buyer I'm a little more concerned with? The one that's probably hasn't been maintained. And so as much as possible, even if you have an older furnace and older equipment, just getting it serviced is going to give that peace of mind and things to that potential buyer. All right, so green stickering, we don't even, I need to take that slide out. We don't deal with green stickering too much anymore. Sorry, we're kind of cruising through some of these things. Oil fuel tanks. I haven't seen one of these in probably 5 years or so. If you're doing rural properties, that can sometimes be an issue. This used to be a huge topic because about 5-10 years ago, if the buyer bought a property and there was a buried fuel tank, it became the buyer's liability. The last time I talked to the state about 5 years ago, they're like, yeah, no, that's changed. There's state funds if it were to contaminate the water source, and so that used to be a hot topic. That used to like kill the deal. And so luckily we don't have to deal with that anymore. So that's what it would look like, just pipes coming out of the ground. But yep, there's a buried fuel in there. Fireplaces with stoves. That's another big one, kind of like decks where, yeah, you've got 2 wonderful, beautiful fireplaces. Well, when was the last time they were cleaned? Do they even like work? How are they functioning? We had one a few weeks ago. It was a newer house, only 3 or 4 years old, and it had a nice big gas fireplace, but it was just black and nasty outside. A gas fireplace shouldn't be black. So something's not working right. So again, that creates doubt of like, oh no, I was looking forward to this fireplace and now it's a negative rather than a positive. Okay, cruising through some of these. All right, so when it comes to home inspections, buyers versus sellers, this is kind of what we're getting at. So you see all of the issues that you don't need to have your sellers give an inspection. You can work through all of this, but that's kind of what I'm emphasizing, and that's what a lot of agents are starting to do, especially in other states, is they're seeing like, we could just do a home inspection and give that home inspection. So a lot of them now are even just putting those on the MLS and just saying, hey, give us your best offer. And you guys can verify this, but some agents have said, yeah, if they give me an offer and we've given all this information, they can't negotiate on any of that because they were fully aware of all of those issues. If the report said, hey, the roof is at the end of its life, they can't come back and say, well, we want to negotiate because we just had our own inspection and we know the roof. No, we already told you that. You made an offer based on all of this information. We're not going to. And so that's what a lot of people are seeing. Now, what I'm seeing, this is kind of some of the new stuff, is for years we've done seller inspections. And what's changing is where the seller inspection in the past has always been, let's just do a buyer inspection. So the seller now has that information and they can preempt any of those negotiations. So it's basically, let's do a buyer inspection for the seller. They're now armed with that information. They can do everything, you can make the necessary price adjustments and they can put it, and then you just go about your listing the same way. What's shifting is now, it's not just for my information, but it's now more of a marketing piece. It's more of a, hey, put it out there, not just for the seller. And so the feedback we're hearing back is, like, for example, I just talked to, it was a commercial job, commercial agent, and he said, yeah, it was an out-of-state client, they were looking to just lease some spaces, and we went to 3 or 4 properties, and one of them had kind of a full detailed spec sheet with floor plans and full images and pictures, and the other ones just kind of had some written up details. They didn't even look at those other 2 because they were out of state and they had specific requirements and they didn't want to try to figure that out, so they just went with the one that already had a lot of that information available. So having floor plans, having 360 pictures, having the full details of what's going on is now what we're starting to see, especially with out-of-state buyers. Well, like, let's look at it. There's all this uncertainty where, oh no, this is exactly what we're getting. And they can move forward with.
Just a quick question, there's nothing that would stop us from putting the seller's paid for home inspection in the documents, unless there is there.
That's
what you're saying.
that's what I'm starting
Yeah.
to see, is before they would kind of hold it, yeah, if you make this an offer, then we'll share the report with you. Why?
Why waste your time with an offer and then,
Just-
yeah,
Yeah, just get it out there.
Yeah,
That's, to
and,
me,
you know,
that's,
like, due diligence is now 5 days.
Way
You
quicker.
can wait on inspector.
Yeah.
right, yeah, interesting.
and so that's kind of the shift of what we're seeing is, and that's what Pillar to Post. I'm not supposed to market during my CE classes, but
This
that's what,
company that's sitting right there.
that's the extent of what we can do. But that's kind
It's
of
covered
what, that's what
online.
we're trying to figure out is, some agents are basically saying, hey, you know, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, how many agents were doing full staging? How many agents were doing 360 tours? How many agents were doing even professional photography? And now, yeah, are you even really a legitimate agent if you're not doing some of those things? And so that's kind of what they're starting to see in some parts of the country is agents are like, yeah, no, we're gonna come in and stage it, we're gonna professionally do photography, and we're gonna do a full inspection, and then now we have a full, complete offering, and this is what buyers can come at us with their offers. So biggest differences, there's really not as far as the process goes. Why sellers and some of the advantages is you can actually highlight some of those features. So, again, a classic example of this one is I went down, I did a duplex down in Provo years ago, and you think of the demographic of buying a home in that area, south of BYU, buy one unit, rent out the other, kind of subsidize some of your living expenses while you're going to school. That was the setup. Well, whatever happened, I got to the inspection and whoever was the previous owner, the HVAC guy got the biggest commission bonus, I'm sure, because this was like, not even Cadillac, this was the, nth degree HVAC system installed in both of these duplexes. So this was even before heat pumps were even really popular or very affordable. Yet this had full heat pump systems on both units, high efficiency furnaces. It was, so basically, if you wanted to make this house as energy efficient as possible from an HVAC standpoint, that's the system you'd put in. Yet you look at the sales sheet and it said brand new furnace and air conditioner. That's the kind of stuff that, man, the agent probably didn't know, the seller probably didn't even know, but the home inspector would be like, shoot, this is pretty cool. You should push this. This is worth a lot because that demographic, they're looking at cutting expenses. That's why they're buying a duplex. Well, this is the one that's also gonna save them on electricity and things like that. So those are the things, those
Yeah.
marketing points is what you can work with the inspector when they're doing a seller inspection, not just say, hey, give me the problems, but hey, what are some unique things about this house that you think of? What are some features? Well, yeah, it's take my house. I have this house and it's got how many of you are familiar with an asphalt coated metal shingle? Not very common, but it's a metal roof. It kind of looks like a tiled roof, but it's actually metal and it's coated with asphalt. Like it looks like a shingle material. They're not common. For whatever reason, the previous owner got sold on it and it was there when we bought it. Great. What else is great? It's a lifetime warranty. I don't ever have to do anything. Anything goes wrong, I can call the company and they will come out and fix it.
Wow.
That would be something that,
Put
would
in
be
there.
great to promote to potential buyers.
I'm sold. I have a listing from that.
And it looks great. I'm just looking at the pictures, like you can't even, it doesn't look Looks like a normal roof.
Yeah, they look great, they're pretty good.
I thought he pulled up to your house that fast.
I know,
I was really nervous.
Like,
So one of the biggest things that you can do, that, you know, to help your sellers realize some of this is the negotiating side of things. I meant to
What-
bring a cost guide, but you can get them on here, I will, I'll send out a link. The cost guide that we have, we give a cost guide with all of our inspections that just has average costs of repairs. And so let's take a furnace, for example, and it might say the average cost is between $4,000 and $8,000. Well, the seller can probably get it done for $4,000. The buyer is gonna negotiate $8,000. That's the value of the seller having that information up front. And one of the other things that I always hear back from agents is, well, my seller doesn't have any money to do anything. Great. Even more so, having yourself armed with knowledge. Okay, great, you don't have any money to go spend on a furnace? Do you have an hour to go call 2 or 3 furnace companies and have them come and give you a bid? Okay, great, this is how much it's gonna cost. You present that with your offers. Yep, we know the furnace is old, we know we need a new roof, here's the estimates, we've already factored that in. Make us your best offer. And so you don't have to fix anything, as long as you're aware of it and you show some, hey, yeah, we care, we realize that's what it is. Make us an offer. That's kind of what we're getting at. Oh, there's our next keyword.
Let me give that on mine. There we go.
All right. So some other reasons why a pre-listing or seller inspection could be beneficial. If you know what this picture is on the left, those are
Termites.
termites.
Oh.
Most
We don't see them here very often.
no, we don't. But when you do, it can freak out sellers, or freak out the buyers. It can delay things because they now need to negotiate. We want to get it treated. We want to. So again, if your buyer can figure that out beforehand and get things taken care of, how much better is that of, hey, yeah, we had some rights that's taken care of. Here's your 10-year warranty, blah, 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 move on. Mold in the attic. How many of your sellers go up into the attic? How many of you go up into the attic while you're doing your listing? No. So there's places in the house where you're never gonna go until the inspector for the buyer goes, and you don't want those surprises. This was another real fun one a long time ago. The house was built in 1930, and I'm going through and I'm just like, this is not a 1930s house. It had PEX plumbing, it had grounded electrical, everything was like brand new. And the seller again stops home for a little bit. Hey, what's going on? What year was this house built? She's like, well, funny thing, it was built in the 30s, but around the late 80s, they picked up the house and they put it on this foundation. So
Wow.
basically the studs were from the 30s, everything else was from the 80s. Well, the appraiser didn't know that. So the buyer got a sweet deal because they got a 80s house
For
for
30s.
30s prices. So little things like that. Again, going in those places, disconnected ductwork and crawl spaces. This is what I was talking about with decks. You can't use those kind of screws. You're supposed to have nails in all of those holes. That vent was put on
Those are the
backwards.
screws you can't use, those look like decking screws.
They are deck screws and they're worked for the wood components, but the metal components can't use screws. They need to be nails. You know, this is another one that often happens. This is a high efficiency furnace. They always leak, they always cause some corrosion. And if it's July, I don't know. Looks like it's had a problem. Has it been fixed? I don't know. I can't really run it. It leaves this uncertainty where, yeah, you got some corrosion, but yeah, it looks like they just got this service. So yeah, you're good to go. It's a whole different communication, whole different
Cool
perspective.
vent up there.
Yeah,
Turtle vent.
that kind of goes back into our new construction, like.
Totally backwards.
So these are older numbers, things have obviously gone up a lot, but this is what I was talking about. This is where it's pretty rare that I don't find, let's say your inspection costs $500-800, that you're not gonna have at least that much of stuff that could have been negotiated. I mean, there's enough stuff in almost every home inspection that if someone wanted to negotiate $1,000, how many of you wouldn't be like, yeah, whatever?
Yeah.
So why not use that towards the inspection? And you're saving money, but the other benefit, and that's probably the biggest feedback we're getting, is it streamlines that whole process. because there's no back and forth, there's no waiting for all this due diligence.
And then just as a listing agent, if you don't know the other inspector, like what if they're just trying to help out the buyer, you know, and you don't have your own inspection to be like, no, you're actually making that a way bigger deal than it is.
Yes, so that's the other big part of where this is, you get to control that whole dialogue a little bit more. Just again, a little bit more, how do you become a home inspector in Utah?
Pass a test.
Oh,
You have to, yeah, it's literally like.
It's, yeah,
need
literally, it's
anything.
just above having a pulse, you have to be able to go into the city office and take out a business license.
That's it.
That's the extent of what is required to be a home inspector in Utah. So
Wow.
anyone can be a home inspector, and since anyone can be a home inspector, anyone can do anything and call it a home inspection.
Mhm.
So. Yes,
But you don't have to go to classes, like, rural stuff,
That's not.
in Colorado you do, so,
Yep.
yeah.
Colorado has some,
There's-
they don't have full licensing, but they do have some certifications. Arizona's full licensing, Texas is full licensing, California is ridiculously licensed. Utah or Wild Wild West, anyone can do anything.
So what would a company that is like, you know, green and blue and like, you know, has created, they- what would they expect out of their people in order to be good inspectors?
We have a full training certification, and then for my team personally. It's very subjective, but basically, until they can do the inspection like me. I don't turn them loose, so like I have a guy right now who's in that process where he's got most of his, we make him go through a class, we make him take tests. But now, so I had an inspection this afternoon and at 2 o'clock and it's vacant, so I reached out to the agent and said, hey, do you mind if I take a lot longer? So I have my guy going at 11, he's gonna do it, and then I'm gonna do it, and then I get to compare, and so things like that.
Unless you wanna put on the contract, if you're gonna hire an inspector outside of a blue and green company. Like, it has to be, they have to have like some certification.
So just some other things on finding your home inspector, errors and omissions. So one of the things is liability. So one way that Utah has tried to provide a little bit more protection for you guys is, since they couldn't get licensing, they've tried that 3 or 4 times in my career. So it's not like they're not trying. UCAR, the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, they finally said, well, there's nothing at the state level, at the board level, what can we do? I have to prove that I'm at least insured to a certain amount if I wanna get a super key. So that's your number one. If you ever have a home inspector that doesn't
No
have a
Supra.
super key, I would be very wary. Cause that means that they haven't been able to prove that they're even insured to be, I mean, that's a liability for your sellers as well.
Yeah.
It's not as bad now, but I remember 10 years ago, we went and we mystery shopped all of the affiliates on UCAR. And there were 2 other companies that carried errors and omissions. Everyone else carried general liability. General liability for me costs about $700 a year. That protects the seller in case I damage their property. Errors and omissions is like a doctor's malpractice. That's if I screw up doing the job. That's what protects the buyer. That one cost me $4,000 or $5,000 a year. So since none of them are required, you can see why a lot of inspectors may not carry that. So that was why the boards.
Neither of those are required.
No.
No, nothing's
Oh,
required.
wow.
So there is one other piece that most home inspection companies that have a good errors and omissions, this is important for you guys, that whole thought of, well, I don't want to refer an agent or an inspector because I could be held liable. We have a specific policy called a referrer's policy. That if you were ever held liable for referring us, you're covered by the insurance. So as long as you have a good inspector that has a good insurance, you're more at risk by letting the buyer choose someone than actually providing them with, hey, here's 2 or 3 agents or inspectors that I know are gonna cover both of us. We're running out of time, so. There was one other piece that I wanted to add, that what we've been finding, and what we've been doing, we actually have one tomorrow that we're doing. What we found is that not only providing the inspection, does it provide a bunch of information to the potential buyers, But especially if you choose a company that they recognize, they're less likely to go and hire their own inspector. And so what we do, what good home inspection company should do, is we'll do a consultation. So like we have a pre-listing, actually, oh, no, it's a different one. We have a pre-listing that we did a few weeks ago. Now it's under contract. And so now the buyer says, well, I kind of want a little bit more. I have the report, but what does all of that mean? And so we charge a fraction of the price, basically take them on as a client, and then we go do the whole review and inspection and walkthrough with the client. So they're getting it for we're usually around 30% of what it would normally cost. And so they're getting a fraction, but then they're getting it, they're one of our clients now, so we're liable to them as well. And then they can add on, and so he's gonna add on and do a radon test. I don't recommend like sewer scopes and radon tests and mold tests and a lot of those to sellers, because why? I would recommend mold tests if you have mold issues on your disclosures. Do a mold test so that you can show that it's been cleared. Otherwise, don't open up and give, like radon, for example, if you just do the math, you have a 1 in 3 chance it's gonna test positive. But you only have a 1 in 3 chance that they're actually gonna want a radon test as part of their due diligence. So
30% of 30.
right, so
Don't
it's
take the
30%,
risk.
if you do it, it's 30% of 30% if
Yeah.
you wait for them to do it, so. Yeah. So we are about, I think we have about 5 more minutes to meet our state required, so I'm going to try to, again, setting expectations, whether it's for the buyer or the seller, the biggest thing is make everything accessible. We have locks on doors, we have, we had one last week where we couldn't get an electrical panel because there's a padlock on it. Well, that just creates uncertainty, creates anxiety on the buyer of like, well, what if, why is that? They start getting skeptical. Well, why are they hiding that? What are they trying to conceal? Blah, blah, blah. So again, when we do it on the seller side, we have that little bit more where we can kind of go back and forth. To kind of wrap up, again, because this is pre-listing inspection, hopefully we've covered enough of the whys, the how and the what. We do the process the same. We try to get as much information. If there are unique features and things, have a list of those too and give to the inspector before the inspection. Hey, we just did a new roof. Even better, it's great for me to be able to put in the report, hey, you've got a new roof. It looks like it was done by XYZ company. Here's their contact information. And I can put that in the report. If they want to follow up on what work was done, if they want to follow up, give me the dates, all of that information, if you can provide to the inspector before the pre-listing inspection, is just going to make for more information that can go into the report. We will usually go out and do it. Now, one of the other questions that comes up is when should I do the pre-listing inspection? And that one, I haven't seen a clear when. For some, they like to do it before it's even on the market. And those are usually the rougher houses where, okay, give us our checklist and we're going to prioritize what we're going to get done. The other is, hey, we're about ready to get it staged, let's go. Part of the reason for agents doing it at that point is our inspections always come with a 360 tour in the floor plans, so they can kind of get all that taken care of. But for those that we do earlier on, then usually depending on the cost and the timing and everything, we'll come back out and just do a re-inspection. And we can update some of those pictures. But a lot of times they like to see, oh yeah, we got that taken care of. Yep, that got fixed, and we can update the report, so then they have a full report they're going down. And then promoting to the buyers, hey, we already had this inspection done. The inspection company offers a discounted final walkthrough with the buyer if they want to take that up instead of doing their own full inspection. All right.
Oh, I was gonna say, we didn't even get to the last
That
one.
was the last one. We have one more. Know that there are limitations as well. We're getting into winter time. We're at the time of year where we can't test air conditioners on most days. We don't run an air conditioner if it's below 65 outside. So there's things like that also you can help with that due diligence, because okay, maybe we could test it today, but we can't tomorrow. Maybe it was raining and we couldn't get up on the roof and now we could. And so there's other things like that doing this earlier on can help shorten that due diligence period.
You guys don't climb on snow and all that for safety, do you?
Correct. Well, I leave it up to the inspector's discretion, but yeah, in general. All right, we are out of time, so I'm going to. Yeah, we'll wrap up with that. So bottom line, we don't want any surprises and that's really the end goal. If we can avoid those surprises, it's the surprises is usually what throw you guys into oh crap, now I gotta go find this. Oh, hey, it's those surprises and those things that were unexpected. And by providing all that up front, it's gonna make your jobs a lot smoother from that. Because in all honesty, think about it. How many of you, when you have a listing, you're crossing your fingers until the due diligence deadline? You're just holding your breath, waiting, because you don't know what's gonna come. So why? Avoid that. That's kind of what we're doing.
Love it.
Yeah,
Questions?
good job. Does anybody
Mine
online
for
have
me.
questions?
Jared.
So one of the things I was gonna.
We have your cards over here. I thought you were looking for a card.
Well, I was going to, I forgot to throw this up. This is the QR code.
Oh, we don't.
If you want to get, if you scan this QR card, this was from an event we did last week. If you scan that QR code, you'll get my digital business card. And on there is a link to that cost guide that has all the different costs and average costs to repair a roof, to put in new flooring, all of that. And that's sometimes the easiest way to show a seller, okay, well, we can spend this money up front to avoid all of these negotiations. So that's.
Do you want me to put that up? Or
Yeah, I don't-
the camera's right
Oh.
here. We're gonna put it up, so if you guys wanna scan us,
I don't know how
Digital?
that will work.
I don't know if you're over there. Oh, try
All right, so now the class is done. Now I can kind of show you a little bit more Pillar Post stuff. This is what we're kind of one of the things that corporate is changing. So in addition to the home inspection, they're doing this home highlights report. And so this is how some of them have, so like this is what some of the agents are doing now at their listing is like. This is at their listing and you can scan and get the 360 tour, the floor plans, or the full inspection report.
Which, by the way, if you didn't know that Pillar posted floor plans, I love it. One of my agents yesterday was asking me, I'm like, get Jared over there and get a floor plan, because they feel like their square footage is off, and I said, we won't actually give you like perfect square footage, but you can decide how far off it is.
Yeah, and then you get the official.
Yeah.
So this is the home highlights report, and so it's kind of a summarized. Here's my analogy is you go into the dealership to you wanna buy a new Ford Escape. Yeah, I'm gonna get an SUV. You go to the Ford dealership and you see their brochure. Okay, great. This is how great the Ford Escape is. And then next to it, they have the consumer reports that has their SUV evaluation of everything about. This is kind of that consumer reports. This is the third party. Hey, let me just give you a rundown of all the different systems. And so that's what this highlight report is try to, hey, this is what the roof looks like. This is what the HVAC system looks like. This is what the plumbing system is. And just at a glance gives you that kind of highlighted. So that's kind of some of the things that we're doing a little bit different on the, and over the next few weeks, Pillar Post is rebranding them and calling them market ready inspections. So don't be confused. They're just shifting because they really want to focus more that this is now a market ready home versus just a home that got inspected before it was listed. So,
Awesome.
questions, anybody?
How much?
How much?
is the packages?
Size and square footage is
Oh,
what it's based
Okay,
on.
so.
Uh,
5 to 800?
4,000.
Like your condo, so things are on your condos are gonna start in the around 300. And then it's going to average people for 4,000 square feet. I'd say you're probably in the $600 to $800 range, depending on the floor plans. So here's the other thing too, is we have different inspection packages. So you can probably see there.
Yeah.
The middle package and the top tier I wouldn't recommend for sellers. And so then it comes down to the bottom two. The middle one includes the floor plans. It includes infrared. It's kind of a little bit more robust. So for an extra couple $100, if you want the floor plans, but it just, to me, if a buyer sees, wow, you just did a $700 inspection, why am I gonna go wanna spend another $700? Or if it's like, oh, you did a $400 inspection, yeah, we do another $400 inspection, so it's kind of. Again, obviously I'm biased, but that's kind of how I've seen people work, the ones where it's more of like, wow, I don't wanna go spend another $800, let's just take this inspection and go with it. That's what seems to be happening,
Yeah.
so. Okay.
Sweet, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jared.
That was
Thanks,
awesome.
guys, thanks to you online.
Yes, thanks, Tana.
Yep, I will stay on a little bit longer, Richard, until you fill out that Google form. I think
Love it.
everybody else did, but,
Okay, I'll just mute us then.
okay, wonderful. Thanks.